Hello and welcome to today's 94 to 100 for my no cards build log for Stronghold Kingdoms. Here I am still playing USA 3. Now I'm aware that the world server has launched, so a lot of players are going to be moving over from the USA 3. And I was asked about this previous. What effect did I think the opening of a world server would have on other worlds, especially USA 3? And it is, in my opinion, going to impact USA 3 the most because USA 3 is the newest server. So the players that regularly jump from server to server are now going to jump from USA 3 and move over to the world server because they generally go along with whichever server is the newest. The other worlds will also be siphoned off of their player bases, especially older worlds, I believe, such as World 1. UK World 1, of course. That is a world that has a lot of veteran players who have been with the game since it was in alpha stages and just have never found the world to move over to that would really replace it. When the Europe server was launched, a lot of them did go over from World 1 to the Europe server, but those servers have dwindled and some of those players may have come back. Now, I'm not all that active in World 1, so I can't personally vouch for the plans of those people, but I've seen them posting in the forums, for example, and they're definitely out there. And the scope of the impact is yet to be determined, but it is my personal belief that it will impact USA 3 the most, especially given the fact that not all the counties have even opened yet. I mean, if we take a look at here, there are huge swaths of Texas that are not, the counties aren't open whatsoever. Some of these may open as more of the developing players gain access to more villages, but this is pretty much the nail in the coffin for USA 3, and it is why Firefly needs to relook at the idea that they should close older worlds. Now, I know this is a delicate subject because players who've been playing those older worlds have invested a lot of time and in many cases a lot of money into the world. So how are they going to go about doing it? Go about migrating those players in a way that makes them feel that they are being treated fairly, that they are being rewarded for the time, the effort, and expense or the money that they invested in that game world. And one of the things that I would like to see are especially maybe something cosmetic. I know the problem with a lot of rewards in Stronghold Kingdoms is they can be obtained by money, right? Firefly can give away card packs, they can give away crowns, all the stuff though that they're giving away for winning an age can be obtained by money. It doesn't actually have to be earned, it can be bought, and this is a problem. And the way I see it, the only way you can resolve this problem is by introducing a mechanic into the game, introducing an item. I don't know what it would be. It shouldn't be something that can too harshly impact the gameplay, that can unbalance the gameplay, but it needs to be something that can only be earned by winning an age or maybe by migrating from a world. In other words, a world veteran. You may unlock unique buildings or something. Now, it doesn't have to be only cosmetics, although cosmetics would be nice. If when another player scouts your castle, you could have a different variety of castles. You could have a different skin on the castles because Firefly in the past has done different skins. If you look at Stronghold 3, you're going to see a very dark, very moody, atmospheric skin that all the walls and all the castle structures have. So it's been done before. And the thing is, being able to introduce that into the game, something that other players can see, something that's a bragging rights, something that players can hold up as sort of bragging rights, that they survived that world, that they won that age, anything like that. It needs to stop being crowns, it needs to stop being card packs, and even, to tell you the truth, one of the most useful things I like to see given to me if I was essentially kicked out of a world when it closes would be good premium tokens. If I was given, I don't know, 6 months worth of premium tokens, I would consider that worth my time because, to be honest, I don't find managing 40 villages all that compelling, okay? Once I get over about 10 villages, it starts to become taxing. The amount of time you have to invest on each village. You can no longer micromanage each village anymore. You actually have to spend so much time managing those villages that are managing them to be effective, that it reduces the amount of time you can invest in other areas of the game and even in your life. So, in my personal opinion, allowing players to have 40 villages was a step in the wrong direction. I don't want that many villages. I don't know who else does. I don't really recall it being a player suggestion. I don't remember going into the forums and seeing, hey, here's a suggestion. Let's introduce a lot more villages. Players can have 40 villages. That has never come up that I've seen. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. This is anecdotal, and I don't think it should be an overall indicator of a trend or anything, but I am rather familiar. I'm more familiar with the game than most people. So I think my opinion on this subject holds more weight than your average player. Now, there are plenty of veterans out there who likely know much better than I do, and I would like to hear from them if any of them watch this. What is your opinion of allowing players to access 40 villages? Is this a positive change in your opinion? Or would you like to see maybe more troops introduced into the game? Because that is something, even from low players, or new players, that I hear quite often, is that Firefly should introduce some of the troops that they had in their other games into Stronghold Kingdoms. Now, I understand that this can just throw the balance of the game way off. So how about just introducing it for an age? Maybe age 1. I mean, because Firefly has already set aside a whole bunch of ages for these worlds that they're going to go through. Suppose age 1 is just the way it is now, and then instead of the terrible age 2, because let's admit it, age 2 was very lackluster. Instead of the terrible age 2 that Firefly gave us, how about they revamp it, advance the world a little bit in terms of progress, and introduce some more advanced troops like crossbowmen, macemen. I mean, it can fit into the time period, I think. But they haven't done that. And so what you have is, we're just going to give you more of the same thing, because more always equals better, right? What, you like crowns? Let's just give you more crowns for winning it. You like cards? Give you more cards for winning that. We like villages? Well, we'll give you more villages. And it takes too much time. It's as simple as that. There's too much time being spent managing 40 villages every day. Can you imagine having to repair that just from the AI constantly harassing you? When you own 40 villages, let's say 20 of them are controlling parishes. That's 20 parishes you have to manage. And those parishes, maybe it's just me, but it seems like disease is much more rampant in later ages. So you're not only taking care of all 40 villages, all 40 parishes, you gotta heal the disease in all of them. You gotta maintain the castles in all of them. It is just too much, okay? The amount of effort I have to put in one world with 40 villages would be the equivalent of playing on it should be the equivalent of playing 4 other worlds with 10 villages, or something as a crown prince. There was no need to introduce more villages, and I think that was definitely a step in the wrong direction. They should have moved over to actually creating new content, and I know this can be expensive to develop new content, but it's going to keep the players around. So I guess you have to ask yourself, how valuable are the players that you're keeping around making these changes, introducing these new ages to the worlds? And if those players are not profitable enough to justify investing in the game to keep them around, maybe you should consider closing those worlds down, because those worlds are siphoning off their player base. The player base is getting smaller all the time. And now I know for USA 3, I don't know about World 9, but I've heard that it was very lackluster, its launch. And I think USA 3 is very similar to that. And now that the world server is open, there are going to be a lot of players moving over from USA 3 and from other dying servers to it, and which means that those dying servers are going to continue to die. Firefly needs to come up with something. Maybe for the next age, age 6 is going to be the last age. I would like to see that happen. I would like to see an end to some of these other worlds, especially the ones that are dead, that are just dominated by one farming house and nothing else. There's nothing you can do. There have been players who have tried to rise up against them, and they have been marginally effective because the player base is so inactive. Is it really worth it to Firefly to keep these worlds open? Are there players that are really spending enough money on it to justify keeping it open? And wouldn't it be better to move those players into a world where they have some competition? Because if they're active, it's boring just farming, unless you're like me and you don't actually pay money into the game. I am not an asset that Firefly is seeking for. I mean, they like players like me because they give the other players something to beat up on, you know. If you have only a server full of carders, you're not going to have many people in it. So they're going to want the cannon fodder, essentially, and those are all the free-to-play players. So once you have that cannon fodder in there, you don't really care if they leave, okay? They're not as valuable as the paying players. So what you want to do is make sure the paying players stick around and pay money. And if they're in a farming world with no competition, if no one's competing against them, they're not going to be paying money. So that's why Firefly needs to move them over into worlds where they'll be competing, and then they'll have a reason to spend again. So not only is this a win for the players who really, they probably like to be active, they'd like to fight in wars, but they've won. And they're not willing to start over again. So it would, not only would it be a win to be able to move them over to other worlds, but Firefly would also win. So it's a win-win on both sides. And one of the options, in my opinion, is to migrate the servers together. I don't know how much effort that would take. Would it take more effort in introducing more content? I have no idea. But Firefly, I would really like to see them consider something different for Age 6. I would like to see them make Age 6 the final age and close these worlds. So I think that covers my thoughts on the opening of the world server. There was one player who hit Crown Prince within 2 hours, I think it was. And this player used advanced chivalry cards that, according to Firefly, the majority of which were won in the Rise of the Wolf player versus environment server. So, you know, that server might not be balanced either, but it's not going to be a big issue. I see a lot of players complaining in the forums that having one player, Crown Prince ready, is just going to completely topple the world. This player is essentially going to run roughshod over the rest of the 18,000 people that are in that world. That is simply not the case. There is no way one player can actually do that. Usually what happens is when one player ranks up really fast like this and makes a name for himself, you're also making a target of yourself. And many times they cannot handle loss. They cannot handle defeat. And then once they are their faction or their house is beaten, they'll just quit the world altogether because they really weren't invested in it for the long term, and they don't have the psyche required to maintain a presence in that world. Well, things have been pretty quiet for me in USA 3. We are still at war, of course, with House 9, and House 10 has remained on the sidelines. I have acquired my 7th village. I put it in a fellow House 11 parish. I bought a charter to get there because I had a lot of gold on my hands and it wasn't being used for anything else. So in that case, I figured I would go ahead and buy a charter. I kept it in House 11 lands to make sure that there was no conflict with either House 10 or House 2. We're not looking for trouble with those houses, and I'm not interested in chartering something that's far away from me because I don't have the money for that. I also converted my lowland village here, village number 1, converted it to a highland like I was planning to do. Now I can optimize its layout better for the resources, or the research layout, research loadout, I guess you could say, that I have for this world. And it wasn't that way before because I captured it off of another player. You'll notice though that this village really hasn't grown, and I'll be honest that I haven't been building it in the last couple of days due to my activity. I've been preoccupied, I guess you could say, with the world server. I have been spending a fair amount of time over there instead, and I think that a lot of players right now are doing that. So that is not entirely unexpected, but I'll be progressing with this world. I'm not going to be moving over to the world server. I'm going to maintain my presence on this one. That USA 3 is going to be considered my main world, but I'm also going to be cultivating a small presence on the world server, just to keep an eye on events there and hopefully report them in a somewhat compelling manner. So, I am currently Marquis 6th rank. Last week I was a Marquis 9th rank, so I've moved up a few, and I've been investing the research points entirely into the farming tab of my research tree. I put one research point into animal husbandry in the last 7 days, and the other 8 points into pig breeding. So I've completely maxed out this research now, and as you'll notice on a couple of my newer villages, the one that I bought and the one I converted, I'm going exclusively for meat right from the start. I'm not going to be building any apple farms. Now, this parish of Lebanon has a completely maxed out pig farmers guild, and I'm working on maxing out the guild in bucks as well. But currently it and Baltimore do not have maxed out meat guilds, which is going to be a problem because it's going to be harder for me to produce on par what I had when I had apples, because the apple guilds in both of those parishes are maxed out. So this is a downside to it, but overall the amount of space I'm going to save, I'm still going to be able to produce more meat. I'm just going to have to build more farms, and once those guilds get built up, in other words, it can only get better essentially from here. In terms of quests, I only completed one, Team Player 4, and that required me to do some donating, and I should probably work on Team Player 5. I was planning on completing Supreme General 1, but that doesn't apply if you capture a charter, okay? You have to actually capture a village from a player, and doing so costs honor, and I'm trying to hoard as much honor as I can to rank up as fast as possible to keep pace with my research, because it's not desirable to have a research queue that is empty. While that pretty much sums up what happened in the past week, the status quo has been largely maintained. There have been very few changes in both the world and in my personal affairs. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.
Stronghold Kingdoms. What will you fight for? Play now for free.